They deserved to live in comfort after all they had endured, fighting countless days and nights and the cruelty of war. But for many there was unemployment, rationing and poor homes. Apart from their families and loved ones, they had little to call their own. But people were still not defeated. They pulled together and soldiered on. They made the best of what they had and made themselves some fun. They'd hold dances in the village hall. For girls, stockings were only a dream. So many would stain their legs with tea, and a friend would paint on a seam. Folk didn't care about labels. There were no fancy brands to impress. If you were lucky, you could have St Michael or maybe CWS. Schoolgirls' knickers made of navy cotton would last them for 10 years or more. If no younger sister to pass them on to, they'd be cut up for cloths for the floor. At times when wives did have an excess and had one or two rags in hand, they'd make a few much-needed pennies and sell them to the rag and bone man. Some children wore NHS spectacles with a wire rim round the glass. At times when they got broken, mums would mend them with elastoplast. What that did for their eyesight, goodness only knows. It didn't improve their looks either, but in those days folk didn't pose. Wives would cook and sew and knit, they'd mend and they'd make do. Husbands grew vegetables and did DIY and repaired toys and the family's shoes. Meat cooked on a Sunday would stretch for half the week. My favourite day was Monday, when we had bubble and squeak. Eggs were often kept preserved in a kind of translucent paste. Though it kept them fresh for 6 whole months, it didn't do much for the taste. Egg powder was also available, the eggs that had been dried. It could only be used for baking, of course. You couldn't have them boiled or fried. Folk didn't have the luxury of toilet rolls. Most had yesterday's news, cut up in squares and threaded on string and hung up in their outside loos. If ever you found something interesting on the sheet that hung on the string, you could be sure that someone had torn off the end. That could be quite frustrating. Families would take it in turns to bathe by the fire in a bath of tin, so the water wasn't so clean and warm if you were last one in. Folks never locked doors, they were open for air or a neighbour in distress. They were never bothered by burglars. Well, there was nothing worth stealing, I guess. There were very few toys and most were homemade. Children would use imagination. People shared and they cared about one another. Truly a great British nation. They deserved so much but received so little. We can't imagine what each one went through. But one thing's for sure, all they endured did improve life for me and for you.